Mother Darcy had a perpetual street trader's license for a sales pitch in Henry Street for the month of December. She'd been selling there since she was a girl. Tinsel balls, coloured streamers, plastic toys and Christmas decorations. It earned a meagre few shillings in the wettest month of the year. Near drowned she'd be from the rain. But after the war, business started to pick up. The street became much busier. Mother Darcy's pitch was one of the best, outside the Henry Street side of the General Post Office, the side door to number 4 Post Office buildings, home at that time to the fledgling radio station Radio Erin. In fact, the pitch alternated daily from one side of the street at the GPO to the other outside the Monument Creamery. The no parking signs were switched to parking every second day, so that the shops on each side of the street could have a break from the traders. Both pitches were only a few paces from Nelson's Pillar, and it was here where the weekend shoppers left Henry Street for the bus stops on O'Connell Street for the trip home. It was here with Mother Darcy that young Liam spent the month of December. Straight down after school, not to the ma with the fruit at Coles Lane, but to Mother Darcy in Henry Street, learning the spiel. Get your bells, balls, balloons, and tinsel. Get your monkey on a stick. This was an exciting and glamorous time in Dublin. The street was decorated with brilliantly coloured strings of lamps from one side to the other. Giant flashing Santa Clauses, carol singers, bell-ringing crowds of people. The war was long over and people's optimism was showing in the laughter and gaiety of Henry Street. It was still a poor country, money was scarce, but the warmth of the Irish people came shining through at Christmas, laughing and joking and buying up and down the street. It was in Henry Street that the young fella got a thorough grounding in economics and marketing. A business course on the streets it was, a compendium of the supply of law and demand. It started with balloons, which at the time were sold for a penny each. They weren't a great seller, lying inert in a box on the tray, until Liam brought down the Da's bicycle pump and some sticks. Oh, he became an expert at blowing up the balloons exactly right, and tied to the neck with a stick, thread to a stick. With a dozen balloons blown up in a wide spectrum of colours, he'd be off to the bus queues. And no bother selling the balloons. The kids loved them. Bawled for a balloon. And if you accidentally let them grab a stick, it was a definite sale, because they'd never surrender it. Explode it with a bang, maybe, and that was still a sale, but never give it up. On the stick, Liam could get 3p for 2 balloons, and even 2p each for the popular orange colours. Perception added value. Most of the sales items were purchased either from the Northlight Razor Blade Company at the back of Walden's and Garnaby Row, or from Hector Gray's wholesaler of fancy goods, who had a store in Liffey Street. Hector scoured the Far East, Japan, Singapore, Taiwan, during the summer months, ordering goods for the Christmas rush. He became a mentor of young Liam. No, Liam, he'd say, them dolls are selling slow on the street this year. Try these fluorescent Santas instead. Great value too. And in this way, he guided the young fella to the best sellers. You're selling loads of balloons, Hector said to Liam one day. I hope you're making a good profit. The 10-year-old youngster looked up at him. Well, what's profit, Mr. Gray? He asked. Profit, my son, said Hector, is the difference between the price you buy the balloons for and the price you sell them for. Yes, Mr. Gray. I think we're doing all right there with the profit, Liam replied quickly. Hector raised his bushy eyebrows and said, Well, you have to do better than all right, Liam. You have to make sure you get your 1%. You buy these balloons for 6p a dozen, a halfpenny each, so you must sell them for a penny each. Get your 1%. Do you see what I mean? Oh, yes, I do, Mr. Gray, said Liam. Double your buying price is the price to sell for. Buy for a penny, sell for 2p. Buy for a shilling, sell for 2 bob. And that's the 1% profit, is it? Yes, my son, that's it, said Hector. That's what you need to make it worth your while with all the work. That Christmas was terrific on the street, really busy. Liam even took a few extra days off school to help at the stall. The 8th of December was the busiest day of all, a church holiday, the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. No school. Dublin was hit by customers from all over rural Ireland, heading for the bargains in the big smoke. By train, by bus, and by car, they poured into the big Northside department stores. McBurney's at O'Connell Bridge, Guiney's in Talbot Street, Cleary's in O'Connell Street, Arnott's, Woolworth's, and Roach's stores in Henry Street. Todd Burns and Edward Lee's in Mary Street, Lenihan's Hardware and Louis Copeland Master Tailor in Capel Street would be crowded too. And Walden Motor Company in Parnell Street for a new car to go home in for only £300. All the Cullen family were on duty, with Rita and Brian helping the ma with the fruit. Vera, Noel, Liam, and Aunt Julie manned the Henry Street pitch with Mother Darcy. The babies were stuck in a banana box beside the ma, with a Primus stove on standby to make the tea and keep the babies' feeding bottles warm. All hands on deck, with even the da showing up for security duties. He even ran around to Hector's for more stock when Liam sold out of balloons. Coming up to the final weekend in December, trouble broke out on the street. The normal setting up time at the pitches was about 7 o'clock in the dark of early morning. Prams, handcarts, boxcars, even horses and carts would arrive to unload the wooden trays and the boxes filled with stock. Some of the dealers balanced the display tray on a tall wooden leg. Liam, Molly, and the ma went straight to the street after 6 o'clock mass in William Street, with Liam pulling his boxcar and the ma pushing her pram. They arrived before 7 this Saturday to find that a number of strangers had already taken over a few prime pitches, including Mother Darcy's. Mary, coming across from Nelson's pillar, immediately tensed when she didn't recognise the dealers. "Who might you be?" she asked of a big stout woman dressed in a tight brown overcoat, not a shawl. "And what do you think you're doing here on my mother's pitch, that she has a licence for since before you were born?" The woman was taken aback and glanced at a tough-looking man on the footpath. It was he who replied, "We're the Barrys from the Liberties, and we've a street trading licence, so we're entitled to sell here if we want to," he said brusquely. The man looked up at the group one by one, 5 of them, 2 rough-looking men and 3 women. She knew it was still a bit early for the regulars to arrive. "Well, listen to hear me now, Mr. Barry," she said. "I'll only say this to you once. This 6 feet of footpath is licensed to Mother Darcy here for the last 40 years. She's been here every December, come hail or storm, all her life. She was here when the GPO was a shambles after the 1916 rising, and she'll be selling here today and every December day as long as God spares her. So it's very simple. I don't care what license you have, but you'll move them boxes of yours on out of here. And Mary Oglesby and Ginny Foster have the next 2 pitches, and they're friends of ours too. So I hope we're not going to have any trouble, and that you'll just move on, Mr. Barry." Barry was undecided. 1 woman, 1 young fella, and an old granny. Sure, what could they do, he asked himself. They couldn't push him around, but then again, he couldn't hit a woman. But Jesus, he thought, it would have been 10 times better if the men folk had arrived, and he and his brother with a knuckle duster in each pocket. His wife Bridget was a stout enough girl, but he could see this Darcy woman was mad for road. She had a wild look in her eye that spelled trouble. "Well, Mr. Barry, I can see you're a Liberties man, all right," said Mary, as she took off her shawl and slowly rolled up the sleeves of her gansey. "You take all day to make up your mind. I've done all me explaining, and you can still think that you can take advantage of a poor defenceless old grandmother?" She paused and looked at him slowly from head to toe. "To think that the O'Rahilly and 100 brave Irishmen fought and died here at the GPO for the likes of you. Well, I'll soon teach you manners," she said, and she reached into Liam's boxcar. Out came her poker, and she took Mother Darcy's walking stick and handed it to Liam. She swished the poker through the air with a vicious swipe, and Barry jumped back. Well, Mr. Barry, is it walking out of here you are, or will they have to carry you? She said fiercely through clenched teeth as she walked towards him. Barry made his mind up. Oh, no, Mrs. Darcy, it's all right, he said quickly. Sure, we never knew you had permanent license for these pitches. We thought our street trading licenses were good enough for here or anywhere else. We didn't mean no harm. Come on, Bridget, Thomas, load up them prams. We'll move down the street. And move on. They did. Jenny Foster arrived just as they were pushing off. What's going on here, Mary? She asked. Did we have visitors? She knew by the look on Mary's face and the poker in her hand exactly what was going on. Yes, Ginny, said Mary. Tourists from the Liberties who got lost on the north side. But we've given them directions home, and I don't think they'll get lost over here again. Mother Darcy had her rosary beads in her hand. She had started praying, even walking across from the pillar. Oh, we can thank Jesus and his blessed mother for sparing us from trouble on this dark morning, she said. Ginny looked at her, turned and looked at Mary with the poker, and Liam with the walking stick, and broke out laughing. I think, Molly, she said, the Bell Jays has got a bit of help from your Mary in this particular row. Even Mother Darcy joined in the laughter.
That was an extract from Bill Cullen's It's a Long Way from Penny Apples. It was titled A Christmas Bonanza and was read tonight by Tommy Campbell.
One week to Christmas, and the silly season was in full swing everywhere. Hangovers, panic attacks, shopaholic syndrome, road rage, and plastic surgery were evident at every turn, intermingling with the dazed, depressed, and bewildered, of which on this occasion I definitely was one. I had just left work and had an hour to spare before collecting the children. So I headed straight to the local shopping centre. I went to the upstairs restaurant and ordered myself a nice hot meal and was truly grateful to pounce on an empty table as I paid the cashier. As I consumed my BSE special, I absent-mindedly observed shoppers from my balcony table. Sure, I might as well have a quick look in Dunn's while I'm here, I decided. A few minutes later, I was at their Christmas tree stand, comparing height, fullness, and prices. This one should do nicely, and we can all decorate it this evening. And so I selected our new tree. It came in 50 pieces and was compressed into a large, awkward, and bulky box. It proved difficult to lift, but I managed to haul it to the checkout somehow. A fraught but helpful young blonde cashier generously offered to have someone carry my cumbersome package to the car for me. Great, thanks, I said, and she duly hit the relevant buzzer, beckoning the floor manager to my assistance. Now this is what I call customer service. Brilliant. Unfortunately, when I saw the manager, I was slightly disappointed and beginning to feel guilty for some unknown reason. He seemed irritated as he silently hoisted up the box with a look of almost bored contempt, while also managing to look extremely important and professional in his pristine suit. I got the impression that he felt this errand was beneath his station in life. I began to feel small and awkward, like an unwanted Christmas gift, as I followed his indifferent stride to the escalator. My first and only attempt to engage in small talk fell flat on its ass. So I turned my attention to where I'd parked the car instead. That's funny. Where did I park it? I racked my brains, but I couldn't remember. My memory has always been patchy, but this was a new one on me. Surely to God I'm too young to be getting Alzheimer's. Where on earth did I park it? I know. To avoid embarrassment, I'll get him to go to the rear exit, where I usually park, and tell him I can manage the box from there on my own. But when we got to the back door, he refused to hand over the tree, suddenly coming over all helpful and chivalrous. Damn. Now you'll have to tell me the truth, you Wally. Look, I said sheepishly, this is very embarrassing, but I can't remember where I parked. Not to worry, he said, gazing out at the lines and lines of parked cars. What kind of a car is it? I'm sure we can find it. Why, oh, why was he being so helpful now, when I have this dreadful feeling in the pit of my stomach and this frustrating memory block, and in the cold sober light of day? I've never felt so ridiculous. It's a black Volkswagen Golf, I inform him, and immediately he's off running up and down the lines of cars checking. There's one here, 97D, he shouts, beckoning me over. No, mine's 95D, I say. Look, why don't you give me the tree, please? I begged, and I'm sure I'll find it myself. Not at all. Sure, aren't I glad to get out for a bit of fresh air? Honestly. Oh, God. Why, oh, why can't I remember? Why won't he go away? Can't he see I have this terrible uneasy feeling growing inside of me? I think I must have walked to the shops. 20 minutes later, we'd checked every black Volkswagen at the back of the mall, and he still wouldn't give me back my tree. I decided I'd have to come clean. Look, you're not going to believe this, but it suddenly dawned on me that I might not have brought my car with me to the shops. I think I walked. Well, he just looked at me. I could sense he was fighting the urge to kill and dissect me. You think you walked? Huh? I nodded. I must have. Where do you live? In other words, are you an escapee from Portrane? Across the road, Mulberry Drive. I pointed towards our house. Sometimes I walk, it's quicker. I take it it's been a stressful week, he says sarcastically. You'd better believe it, I reply, accepting humiliation and defeat, as he plops the tree onto my outstretched arms, at last, and walks off disgusted. I struggle, stagger, and stumble the 200-meter journey home, reproaching myself all the way. Sure enough, my faithful, reliable Volkswagen rests smugly in the driveway. I hiss my annoyance at it as I head to the front door, all the time imagining in my head the manager's likely remarks to the cashier on returning to the store. Probably something like, "Hey, Maria, next time you sell a Christmas tree, can you make sure the customer actually has her car with her? And that she and it are functioning on all cylinders before my services are called in." Now, where did I put the number for absent-minded anonymous?
You have just been listening to Ursula Byrne reading that piece, A Christmas Cracker. It was written by Anne Smith.
Palace of St. Nicholas, in the moon, Christmas morning. My dear Susie Clemens, I have received and read all the letters which you and your little sister have written me by the hand of your mother and your nurses. I have also read those which you little people have written me with your own hands. For although you did not use any characters that are in grown people's alphabet, you used the characters that all children in all lands on earth and in the twinkling stars use. And as all my subjects in the moon are children and use no character but that, you will easily understand that I can read your and your baby sister's jagged, fantastic marks without any trouble at all. But I had trouble with those letters which you dictated through your mother and the nurses, for I am a foreigner and I cannot read English writing well. You will find that I made no mistakes about the things which you and the baby ordered in your own letters. I went down your chimney at midnight when you were asleep and delivered them all myself. And I kissed both of you too, because you were good children, well trained, nice mannered, and about the most obedient little people I ever saw. But in your letter which you dictated, there were some words which I could not make out for certain, and one or two small orders which I could not fill because we ran out of stock. Our last lot of kitchen furniture for Doll's house has just gone to a very poor little child in the North Star, away up in the cold country above the Big Dipper. Your mamma can show you that star, and you will say, little snowflake, with that as the child's name. I'm glad you got their furniture, for you need it more than I. But you must write that with your own hands, and Snowflake will write you an answer. If you only spoke it, she wouldn't hear you. And please, make your letter light and thin, for the distance is great and the postage is very heavy. There was a word or two in your mamma's letter which I couldn't be certain of. I took it to be a trunk full of Doll's clothes. Is that it? I will call at your kitchen door about 9 o'clock this morning to inquire. But I must not see anybody and I must not speak to anybody but you. When the kitchen doorbell rings, George must be blindfolded and sent to open the door. Then he must go back to the dining room or the china closet and take the cook with him. You must tell George he must walk on tiptoe and not speak, otherwise he will die some day. Then you must go up to the nursery and stand on a chair or the nurse's bed. Put your ear to the speaking tube that leads down to the kitchen, and when I whistle through it, you must speak in the tube and say, "Welcome, Santa Claus." Then I will ask whether it was a trunk you ordered or not. If you say it was, I shall ask you what color you want the trunk to be. Your mamma will help you to name a nice color, and then you must tell me every single thing in detail which you want the trunk to contain. And then when I say goodbye and a Merry Christmas to my little Susie Clemens, you must say goodbye, good old Santa Claus, and I thank you very much. And please tell that little snowflake I will look at her star tonight, and she must look down here. I'll be right in the West Bay window, and every fine night I will look at her star and I will say, I know somebody up there, and I like her too. Then you must go down into the library and make George close all the doors that open into the main hall, and everybody must keep still for a little while. I will go to the moon and get those things, and in a few minutes I will come down the chimney that belongs to the fireplace that is in the hall, if it is a trunk you want. Because I couldn't get such a thing as a trunk down the nursery chimney, you know. People may talk if they want until they hear my footsteps in the hall. Then you tell them to keep quiet a little while till I go back up the chimney. And maybe you will not hear my footsteps at all. So you may go now and then and peep through the dining room doors, and by you will see that thing which you want, right under the piano in the drawing room, for I shall put it there. If I should leave any snow in the hall, you must tell George to sweep it into the fireplace, for I haven't time to do such things. George must not use a broom, but a rag, else he will die some day. You must watch George and not let him run into any danger. If my boot should leave a stain on the marble, George must not wholly stone it away. Leave it there always in memory of my visit, and whenever you look at it or show it to anybody, you must let it remind you to be a good little girl. Whenever you are naughty and somebody points to that mark which your good old Santa Claus's boot made on the marble, what will you say, little sweetheart? Goodbye for a few minutes till I come down to the world and ring the kitchen doorbell. Your loving Santa Claus, whom people sometimes call the Man in the Moon.
You've just been listening to A Letter from Santa Claus. That piece was written by Mark Twain, and tonight it was read by John Barrett.